So you want to run a tiny, thin-walled offset smoker. Let me show you how. Obviously, you're going to need some firewood, but this firewood needs to be processed more because this is way too thick for a little smoker. I don't know if everybody does this, but I get rid of spalting. I get rid of mold and fungus, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting rid of some fungus and some spalting. I believe spalting is fungus. So this I don't really like this axe compared to the house maul. I mean, the house maul just works so well. But obviously I wouldn't be able to cut with it, and even this isn't very sharp. So maybe I'll make this into some kind of carving axe, because I don't know, I just don't pick it up much to split with it. A lot of my wood is hardwood, and some of it's pretty nasty, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use it as kindling if I want to, or I'm going to split it down so it's thin enough to use for this smoker. Basically, the whole process of making firewood splits smaller is just for a smoker. You could even say it's kindling size sometimes. Well, not sometimes, definitely kindling size. It's really nice to have a variety of sizes, but especially smaller sizes. When you're running a small smoker, you can sometimes run into an issue that your coal base is getting really small. So you might have to put a even thinner split all over those coals to get the fire going again. And then you could put something, you could also put something thicker so that lights because of the fire of the smaller split. It took me a really long time to figure out fire management in my smoker. And funny thing is, this was difficult. I'm about to smoke a pork loin, like an eighth of a pork loin roast, and I had a lot of trouble. It was maybe because my temp probe had some issues. I didn't really know where I was at temperature wise, but it just happens. And I've found that most of the time it's harder in the winter for some reason. I guess you have to dry out your splits more if it snows. That's why people cover their firewood if they're smoking meat. So you can see this is me getting some pretty small splits. I'd say, I hear people say 1.5 inch thickness. Maybe some of these are 2. But here's a good candidate for splitting out a board, and then I could split some real small stuff, almost tinder size, but not really. I use a torch, so I can be pretty lazy about it. But when I run out of gas, you gotta do it the right way. You gotta really build the fire. Yeah, let's just see how much better this works. This house maul works so well for splitting kindling, and these are good size right here. Those two were perfect. It's pretty much what I always use. And here's a board that I'll just split really small stuff for starting the fire. It just works so well, that goddamn house maul. And it's the edge. So here's my thoughts about a dull edge. When you're splitting with a dull edge, it can be dangerous. It can deflect, but it's likely to deflect if it's really dull. But this is 6 pounds, and it just doesn't deflect. All it does is dent the wood. It's an interesting phenomenon, because I've run into it before with a 3-pound axe where it was dull, and because it was dull, the edge like slipped off of the end grain, and it caused an overstrike, unfortunately. But I have never had that with the house maul, not once. So that's a pretty big split for me, that one right there. And I actually later split that in half before I lit it on fire. Now, here's another thing about leaving. Maybe we shouldn't be leaving the bark on, because look at what I reveal here. You see that black stuff? That's wet. that's like mold or fungus, and I'm pretty sure I end up not even using this split. Now most people aren't going to be as careful as me. Most people are probably going to use the stuff with mushrooms on it. I just don't want to chance it, you know. Someone said to me, so I was drinking some water that doesn't have ice in it, and the person was like, "Why do you do that? Ice water's like delicious, so good." And I was like, "I do so many things that are bad for me. I gotta at least have a couple things, because I don't know. I don't know if that's actually true that drinking cold water is bad for you, but let's just say that I want to have a few things that I'm like, let's do that well for myself." You just see how well it works, and maybe I also don't like that little hatchet because I can't really use it two-handed. Yeah, the dog's going after people that use splits that are too big for their little smoker. It just doesn't, the firebox just won't hold a ton of heat like a thick-walled smoker. And because it's also a small firebox, you're not building a huge coal base a lot of the time. Sometimes I purposely do, but you gotta remember, these cheap smokers, you're gonna deform. You're gonna deform the metal. It's gonna bend. I don't know if you could see it in the video later on, but there's like bending, some pretty significant bending to where the lid closes up. And that's because I've run some really hot fires. I don't think people run purely firewood fires in their smokers that are this size. I think most people use charcoal. In just a few minutes, I got all the firewood I need. Let's start loading it up. You really don't need to do much thinking about how to build a fire when you're using a torch to light that fire, but proper fire building is a good thing to learn about. It'll make it much easier for this process. It'll take forever if you don't know what you're doing, and you'll look like a fool. You won't look good in front of people, and let's be honest, this is where you could look good in front of people. You run a fire yourself, you fuel that fire, you cook food with that fire. That's pretty cool. At least in some areas where that's very uncommon. Where I live, I don't know anybody else running a stick burner basically. And I didn't buy this new. This is a used smoker, and it's beat up, but still works. But I bought it for less than you would buy a Weber grill for, so I don't know. I think that sort of thing is cool. And you could do this in the ground if you don't need special stuff. You just need a lid basically to smoke food. So what I'm doing now is I'm letting this burn down a little bit. We got to get a coal bed going. All right, there we go. Let it burn down a little bit. That fire's not too crazy, but there are a ton of coals, so not a ton, I'd say, actually, but big lump, you know, that's the hot stuff. So we're going to close this, but we're going to monitor it carefully, and I might even leave the lid open for a little while on the firebox. So the closer you put those splits together, the less crazy the fire gets. But if you want to get that split started on fire faster, maybe it would be a good idea to spread them apart and get some airflow. As you can see, it just lit on the end, and this one's not lit on that end, so we got to keep this open for a little while longer. You really don't want to close your lid until you're positive these are going to light on fire. In a small smoker like this, with a small coal bed like that, you got to really baby it. And that's why these splits are so thin, because you can't really get away with thicker splits. Oh yeah, that's a beauty. Man, I'll tell you, there's something about smoking meat. It just looks so much better than when you put it in the oven. All right, all done. Looking very nice. Excited to eat this one. So that's how you manage a goddamn fire and a little smoker. That's how much wood we're left with. I didn't talk too much about dirty smoke, and that's the whole reason why you have the small splits. But here's a good tip right here. Propping that lid open to get more airflow when you got a dirty smoke problem.